Andy Burnham stepped through the black door of Downing Street on Monday, the 20th of July, 2026, becoming the 7th Prime Minister Britain has had in barely a decade. Within hours of taking office, he stood before cameras and made a promise that millions of older voters had been waiting to hear confirmed. The state pension triple lock would stay exactly as it is, untouched, unreformed, and fully honoured under his premiership. For pensioners across the country, that pledge translates into real numbers. Anyone receiving the new state pension who is 77 or younger by next April and who holds a full national insurance record is now guaranteed at least £313 more a year. Those on the older basic state pension, again with a complete contribution record, are guaranteed a minimum rise of £240. These figures represent the floor, not the ceiling. Because the triple lock works by taking the highest of three measures, inflation, average earnings growth, or a flat 2.5%, the final increase next spring could climb well beyond these minimums if wages or prices rise faster than expected between now and the Treasury's calculations. This is not a new position for Burnham. Long before he reached Downing Street, during a Reddit Ask Me Anything session as the frontrunner for the Labour leadership, a user pressed him directly on whether the triple lock should be scrapped given its rising cost to the public purse. His answer was blunt and unwavering. He acknowledged the debate swirling around the policy, but insisted that the commitment written into Labour's manifesto had to stand. That same language, that same insistence on honouring the manifesto word for word, has now followed him from campaign trail to Prime Minister's podium. But the pension guarantee arrives against a backdrop of real turbulence inside his own government. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor who had steered the Treasury since the summer of 2024, is out. In her place sits John Healey, previously Defence Secretary, now handed the unenviable task of reconciling Burnham's instinctively more left-leaning instincts with a bond market that reacts to every hint of looser spending. Burnham has already said he intends to use, in his own words, any flexibility within the fiscal rules, a phrase that alone was enough to trigger a modest but noticeable jolt in gilt yields. Analysts have pointed to options like widening the remit of institutions such as the National Wealth Fund, where additional borrowing can technically sit outside the government's own debt rule, as one route Burnham's team may explore to fund his ambitions without formally breaking fiscal discipline. And there are ambitions beyond pensions. Burnham and Healey have already announced a cut to the sales tax on household electricity bills, dropping it from 5% all the way to 0% starting in October, a move expected to cost £850 million in the 2026 to 2027 financial year alone. Layer that on top of the triple lock, on top of promises to fix social care, build record levels of public housing, and expand mental health support, and the arithmetic facing Healey's Treasury becomes increasingly delicate. Britain's debt sits at roughly 95% of GDP. Borrowing costs have already touched a two-month high amid the uncertainty of the cabinet overhaul, and unemployment has climbed to 4.9% as payroll jobs continue to shrink. Critics of the triple lock, a group that has grown louder with every passing budget cycle, argue that guaranteeing above-inflation pension growth indefinitely is simply not sustainable for a country carrying this much debt, while its working-age population faces its own squeeze. They point out that when wages lag and the 2.5% floor kicks in, pensioners still receive real terms gains that working taxpayers are, in effect, funding through higher borrowing or future tax rises. Supporters counter that pensioners endured genuine hardship through years of below-inflation increases in the past, and that certainty in retirement income matters more than short-term Treasury convenience. Whether Burnham can keep this promise fully intact through a full term, while also delivering the cost of living relief, housing, and social care reforms he has pledged, remains the central question hanging over his early premiership. The triple lock has survived 5 prime ministers already. Whether it survives this one, under mounting fiscal pressure and a chancellor still finding his footing, is a story that is only just beginning to unfold.